Damien, thank you so much for coming to join us here at the University of Regina, and our students have been assigned an opportunity to read some of your plays. One of the popular plays that they're reading, I think, is Good Mother. And it seems to me that Good Mother is very much in the mode that it's been observed that a lot of the best Canadian drama deals with the family. It comes out of the family. And to some degree it has that in common with Lucy. They're almost paired pieces in some way. I wonder if you could respond to that.
Sure. I mean, I would argue that a lot of world drama, drama in general is, familial. Even when it's not familial, it's familial most of the time. Yeah, I mean, Good Mother was my first full-length play, and it is, it's not theatrically, it's not revolutionary, but it's more the subject matter that I wanted to explore, a subject matter that I felt, I could write about with some semblance of authority, a family, right? Even though it's quite a different family than my own. And in that play, I was really looking at, the gravitational force that is a mother, like how a mother kind of holds a family together, and what happens when that mother not only sort of dies, as she does in the play, but in the play she has a stroke and a brain injury, so she doesn't die, but her kind of personality, her life force does change, and so the person that she was sort of dies. And so what happens when not only is the mother removed, but then becomes a dependent? And so the play really asks, what do you do? What is the value of a mother? What does a mother do for a family? Is this woman a good mother? They spend most of the time kind of remembering how amazing she was, and then we meet her very briefly and think, well, she is amazing, but she's not uncomplicated, she's not perfect. So it's about romanticizing the idea of a mother. So when I went to write Lucy, I actually, in order to challenge myself, I wanted to challenge that kind of romantic notion of the mother being the gravitational center, being the kind of a kind of unmovable force, which is what she is in Good Mother. So I wanted to write about a woman who has no mothering instinct. So I really, between those two plays, was trying to put, I think, mothering to the test, which was hard for me, challenging for me. I'm very close to my mother, always mother's figure prominent in my work. So that's what Lucy was, as a way, in fact, a kind of reaction to Good Mother, to put my romantic notion of the mother being perfect and strong and full of love to the test. And the end of Lucy is what kind of comes out of that struggle.
In both plays, you set yourself some challenging territory to cover with respect to, shall I say, medical complications.
Yeah.
And I wonder if you could talk a bit about the sort of preparation you had to do, the kind of research that you had to do that.
Yeah, Good Mother introduced me to this, research, like the sort of research that playwrights can do, and I just loved it. I loved talking to experts, and what I found was that experts really want to talk to you. Like, I talked to a couple of clinical psychologists who had PhDs about brain injuries and strokes and that sort of thing, and therapy for Good Mother, and they were dying to talk to me, because it meant that there might be an awareness, the audience might have a greater awareness of the issues that they deal with all the time. And so that process just got even more extreme with Lucy, because I had to investigate autism and autism therapy and autism triggers and evolutionary biology and anthropology. And again, what I found was you just had to go and find where the experts are and ask them for help. And I worked with one autism expert for 4 years on Lucy. And what I like about it is that you learn something. I got to explore things that as if I was taking a course, but I wasn't taking a course, and then synthesize it into something theatrical. So I love doing that. I think I've developed a little bit of a reputation for being the playwright who does reams and reams of research, which I don't mind, but my bookshelves are now full of giant binders full of
your research,
which is great, because I feel like I learn about all this stuff that I wouldn't have known about.
Oh, now Miss Chatelaine and Real Life Girl are in some ways the other side of your work. They seem to be quite distinct. The one-man show, the play that's very much concerned with issues surrounding a gay man. Can you talk about perhaps where those come from as opposed to the others, or do you see them as being from distinct sides?
I do. There seems to be a kind of two, streams from writing. Miss Chatelaine, the solo stream is kind of, it started because I wanted to create work for myself. And both those plays are, highly autobiographical. There is something about, there were a few lines in Miss Chatelaine, which was the first play, which is a solo play, with 46 characters, that even though I wrote, they stuck with me. They, as if I hadn't written them. There's a couple of lines. One of them was, there's a character in Miss Chatelaine who's based on a real person who says to the main character, who's based on me, I guess, he says, "You'll never get to know the man you are until you become the woman." And it's about, what he's really talking about is learning to balance the masculine and the feminine in you, and which I think is a challenge that every man actually faces, gay or straight, but in this case it was a young gay man. That idea of finding a harmony between the masculine and the feminine really stuck with me for years, until I realized I wanted to write something else about it. And I had this idea to create another piece using vocal or half vocal mask, where it would be all material written for women, but played by a man, and played by a man with no external feminine cues. Yeah. So I wore a suit. I did this play, I did it in a suit. And I wrote all these monologues for women. And then I performed all these songs taken from, pop music, from musical theater, from that sort of thing, for women. And it was all based on this one quote that came from Miss Chatelaine, this, "You'll never get to know the man you are until you become the woman." So it is, even though it's called Real Life Girl, it is about a young man, essentially me, learning how to be a man by embracing what is feminine. Which is, again, I think something that not just gay men need to do, but all men need to do. There needs to be a balancing. But in some ways, Real Life Girl really is was the child, ideologically the child of Miss Chatelaine. So there is a direct progression in those plays, as well as even to the extent there are repeated phrases, that really do represent very directly the evolution in my thinking, in my life, as represented in my work.
Music figures very prominently in really in all of your work, and there's this musical connection with the titles and that kind of thing. But obviously with Miss Chatelaine and Real Life Girl.
Yeah.
If you had your druthers, is musical theater your passion?
I would say it's one of my passions. It's certainly, that's what I was trained in. My diploma is in musical theater from Grant MacEwan, or MacEwan University. I've been lucky enough to do kind of most of my favorite musicals. Very lucky, actually. So I would say it is one of them. Certainly, music in general figures very prominently for me, and I love to sing, and every opportunity I have to sing, and I don't get asked that much actually anymore. I do, and I listen to music when I write, and usually that's actually where I draw the most inspiration. When I wrote Lucy, even though Lucy doesn't have any overt musical elements, and it's not named after a song like all of my other plays, there was a whole soundtrack to that play in the way I wrote it, and certain pieces that I would listen to while I wrote each individual scene. So that, in fact, when we were getting ready to do the world premiere, I made a CD full of all this music corresponding to each scene, and in fact to certain moments that I gave to the director and said, "This is what I mean." So that if, in a sense, I felt like if the words aren't conveying this properly, the music will tell you what I meant by this moment, and if they don't match, then I have to fix those words. So, in a sense, and probably from my musical theater background, there is always music somehow infusing things. What I need to do is write a musical, I think, is the next step.
The next step. Well, that's a great place to finish here, Damien. Thank you so much for joining us here in Regina. It's been great to have you.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.